Welcome, deep divers. You've sent us on a truly fascinating journey today, back to 19th century Germany.
Mhm.
We're going to explore a really powerful movement called the Inner Mission of the German Evangelical Church.
Right.
What intrigues me right from the start is how this wasn't just, a charitable effort. It felt much bigger.
It really was.
It was this profound, kind of multifaceted response to a society that was, well, truly in turmoil, a real call for radical care in an age of immense change.
And this deep dive offers us a remarkable blueprint, actually. Our insights today are primarily drawn from this significant historical document dated July 1889, essentially their manifesto.
A manifesto, wow.
Yeah, its purpose was pretty ambitious: to clearly define, meticulously survey, and passionately advocate for this intermission during a period of, well, intense social upheaval and spiritual challenge.
So not just looking back, but actively pushing forward.
Exactly. And this isn't just some historical footnote. It's a window into how faith communities actually responded to widespread suffering, moral decay, and all those burgeoning social questions of the day.
And you think there are echoes for today?
Oh, definitely. It offers surprising insights that I think really resonate even in our complex world.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to unpack this. We'll be uncovering the core identity of this mission, what it stood for, and, just as importantly, what it consciously didn't stand for.
That distinction is key.
Then we'll confront the stark realities of the societal problems it faced head-on. Things like crumbling family structures, the rise of new challenging ideologies. It was a lot.
A whole perfect storm of issues.
Right. From there, we'll explore the surprisingly innovative and practical solutions it pioneered.
Some really creative stuff, actually.
And finally, we'll look at the ambitious organizational vision they had for its future, how they planned to scale it all up.
Yeah, the structure they proposed was quite something.
So, prepare to be deeply informed about a movement born not just of deep faith, but of incredibly practical, transformative love.
Okay, so as we dive into this, I'm struck by how the Intermission chose to define itself. It wasn't just another charitable organization, was it?
Not at all. The document makes that very clear.
It wasn't about one single activity or, a narrow set of beliefs. Instead, it defines itself as the sum total of love born from faith in Christ. That's quite profound.
It is. And its aim was nothing less than to renew individuals and communities, not just outwardly, but inwardly and outwardly.
So a holistic approach.
Completely. Striving to combat what it called the pervasive corruption directly or indirectly springing from sin, it saw the root cause as spiritual even when the symptoms were social.
That's a really integrated view.
It truly is. And what's fascinating here, and quite unique for its time, is its unwavering emphasis on the helping, serving deed, or, as the German text puts it, die helfende diente dat.
Die helfende diente dat.
Right.
Say more about that phrase. Well, it literally means the helping, serving act. And it really captures their hands-on, practical approach. The mission was designed to serve without first asking whom it serves. It aimed to have already served before it asks.
That's a powerful image, serving first, asking later.
Exactly. And it's a critical distinction because it sets it apart from other forms of Christian engagement, like, say, Christian Science or Christian art, which the document also mentions.
Right, so it wasn't primarily intellectual or aesthetic.
No. It was about direct, tangible assistance. It was about doing, action.
And it consciously differentiated itself from political movements, too, which is pretty intriguing given the enormous social issues they were tackling, right? Why was that line so important for them to draw?
That's a crucial question, and the document hammers this point home. This distinction is central to understanding their whole approach.
Okay.
Its foundational principle was, and I'm quoting here, its realm is that of freedom and love. In German, Ihr Reich ist das der Freiheit und der Liebe.
Freedom and love, not power or politics.
Precisely. It sought to serve the state, yes, but through means of the Spirit, Geistmittel, explicitly rejecting force and coercion, Gewalt und Zwang.
So no compulsion.
None. This non-coercive, love-driven ethos was central. It positioned their spiritual and social work as distinct from purely political activism or state-mandated charity. It was a clear statement. We operate on a different plane. Persuasion and service, not power and politics.
Okay, so if that's what this deeply practical, love-driven mission was, where did this idea of active love truly begin for them? The document traces it way back.
All the way back. Its origin, according to the text, is the very fact of Christ's appearance. It's quite a sweeping historical view, grounding the mission in the deepest roots of Christianity itself.
So they saw it as inherent in Christianity from the start.
Pretty much. It paints this vivid picture, establishing a continuous lineage. In the early Christian era, a powerful love emerged, one that actively sought what this life had to do without.
Seeking out the gaps, the needs.
Exactly. And this love, described as mighty in faith and effective for Christ, was far removed from mere sentimentality. The insight here is that this wasn't passive charity. It was a dynamic force going out to find and address needs, a radical departure.
The text then identifies this interesting historical pattern, almost like a recurring challenge for the church.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It says, after the Roman Empire, the heathen mission ended, but the spirit of intermission didn't immediately transform the church in response to internal societal needs.
Right, the focus shifted externally, but the internal work lagged.
And the document notes this same thing repeated itself with the conversion of most European peoples. The external evangelistic focus changed, but the internal social engagement didn't automatically pick up the slack. There was this consistent gap.
This is a crucial point they're making, and they connect it directly to the Reformation. Martin Luther's theological reforms, particularly his emphasis on atonement, and importantly, the general priesthood of Christians.
That radical idea that all believers have a calling, not just priests.
Exactly. That really prepared the groundwork, or as the text says, the altar, for this kind of widespread lay involvement.
But it wasn't automatic, was it?
No. Even Luther himself, the document notes with, a touch of wry observation, lamented how little citizens and peasants exercise these national deeds and duties.
So even Luther saw the gap between theology and practice.
Right. It acknowledges that despite the theological foundations being laid, deep-seated societal needs remained largely unaddressed, awaiting a more active, organized response. The ideas were there, but the practical application hadn't fully caught on yet.
So moving forward chronologically to Pietism, we start to see these theological foundations translate into more tangible action, right?
Yes, this is where it really starts to gain traction.
The document highlights that new revelations of this life in the church arose through figures like Philip J. Spener and August Hermann Frank. This sounds like a key turning point.
Indeed. Their contributions are seen as vital precursors, truly igniting the flame. Spener renewed the proclamation of the general priesthood through his emphasis on personal piety and active lay involvement, those small groups, the Collegia Pietatis.
Bringing it down to a personal level.
Right. And Frank, building on this, demonstrated faith and prayerful action in Halle. He established groundbreaking orphanages, schools, hospitals, what we'd probably call early social services today.
Real, concrete institutions.
Absolutely. These initiatives, born from deep spiritual conviction and practical compassion, served as models of what was to happen in later days in the fatherland. The document views these as the first roots of the intermission, continuously evolving. It shows how these early localized efforts gradually built towards a larger, more structured movement.
Okay, so the stage is set. By the 19th century, the spirit of intermission was renewed with doubled strength, clearly calling the church to more concerted action. After centuries of these principles kind of simmering, what specifically spurred this new powerful wave of activity? What lit the fuse?
Well, the document points very clearly to Bible societies as the first impetus for the intermission in Germany. It considers them absolutely essential, saying it would have been infinitely difficult to achieve their goals without them.
Bible societies. Interesting. Why them specifically?
This movement, focused purely on scripture distribution, created a vital infrastructure and, maybe more importantly, a widespread sense of spiritual urgency that catalyzed broader social engagement. Getting Bibles into people's hands was seen as that crucial first step towards inner transformation, which would then lead to outward action.
And a prime example of this actually comes from England, doesn't it?
It does. The Great British and Foreign Bible Society, founded way back in 1804 by Joseph Hughes of Battersea, and it was spurred by a very practical need: a lack of Bibles in Sunday schools.
Simple need, big response.
Exactly. And what's crucial here, and quite forward-thinking, is that its purpose wasn't to spread a specific doctrine or denominational viewpoint, but simply the Bibles themselves.
Just the text.
Just the text. That focus on the common ground, the foundational scripture, was quite revolutionary in bridging those denominational divides at the time.
And its reach was incredible, right?
Truly astounding. By the time this document was written, less than a century later, this simple idea had become a living deed, embodied in 7,000 interconnected societies worldwide.
7,000.
Imagine that network, all focused on the power of the printed word for spiritual renewal. It wasn't just local. It was a powerful, international force, showing the potential for organized, faith-based action on a massive scale.
And Germany, of course, had its own vibrant examples developing too.
Oh, yes. The document mentions the Wirtersche Bibelverein at Jüterbog, led by a pastor Stranda, and initiatives in Dusseldorf.
And these weren't just about handing out Bibles, were they?
No, they were more involved. We also produced things like Bible reading tables and devotional materials. The document mentions work by seminar director Hahn and Mers and Dr. Bunsen. It shows a more thoughtful approach, encouraging engagement with the scriptures, not just distribution, pushing for deeper understanding.
But the document also offers a bit of critique, doesn't it? A challenge to the German societies.
It does. It notes quite critically that many German Bible societies had not yet sufficiently promoted the actual reading of Scripture and its correct use and understanding among the people.
So they had the Bibles out there, but maybe not the follow-through.
Kind of. The insight is that the infrastructure for distribution was getting there, but the deeper work of fostering literacy, comprehension, and real engagement with the Bible's message still lay ahead for the intermission. Distribution is only half the battle, right? True transformation needs understanding. Okay, we've established the intermission's core identity, its historical roots in this idea of active love. But to really get why their approach was so radical, we need to confront the harrowing reality of 19th century Germany itself.
Yeah, the context is crucial.
This wasn't just a society with a few problems. It seems like a nation teetering on the edge of profound crisis. And it starts with this stark picture of moral decline.
It really does. The document paints a really grim picture describing mass phenomena of moral or Christian degeneration in the people and a godless, anti-church and anti-Christian spirit just permeating society, not isolated incidents, but widespread.
Precisely. And for the intermission, the breakdown of the family unit was identified as the main task for intervention. That was priority number one.
The family.
Yes. The text dramatically states, and this quote really stands out, Europe's great cities, with all their splendor and intellectual grandeur, have become magnificent ruins of domestic honor.
Magnificent ruins of domestic honor. Wow, that's powerful language.
It's not hyperbole for them. It reflected this deep concern about the disintegration of the traditional family structure and its moral foundations. They saw it as the crumbling bedrock of society.
And they had data to back this up, right? Some really shocking statistics regarding illegitimate births.
Oh, absolutely. These figures aren't just numbers, they're a stark window into a crumbling social fabric. They show how deeply this perceived moral decay had infiltrated the most intimate spaces of life.
Give us some examples.
Okay, so in Paris, it was 1 illegitimate birth per 1.8 children, almost half.
Unbelievable.
Munich, 1 per 2 children. Vienna, 1 per 2.3. Even places like Leipzig at 1 per 4, or Hamburg and Königsberg at 1 per 5.2. And Berlin showed a worsening trend, moving from 1 in 7.8 to 1 in 5.8 in just a few years.
So it wasn't just 1 or 2 cities, it was a widespread urban phenomenon.
Exactly. And the document delves into the underlying causes they saw. It identifies wild marriages, informal unsanctioned unions, and careless and godless unions as significant factors.
But it wasn't just blaming individuals, was it?
No, it's more nuanced than that. It also points to broader unfavorable industrial conditions and state economic issues. It recognized that poverty and precarious livelihoods also contributed heavily to the breakdown of stable family structures.
So moral, social, economic factors all intertwined.
Absolutely. The insight here is a recognition that moral decline wasn't just a spiritual issue in isolation. It was deeply tangled up with economic and social pressures.
And the consequence of all this fragmentation was dire. The document calls it a breeding ground of simmering disgruntlement. In German, Heim des brütenden Missmutes.
Yeah, that phrase captures it perfectly. When family life, the supposed bedrock, is so fractured, it creates this deep well of unhappiness and resentment that can spill out in many destructive ways, threatening social cohesion itself. #, poverty and the chasm between classes.
So the intermission confronted not just this moral decay, but also severe material poverty, which they called pauperism. This wasn't abstract. It was the daily struggle for countless people.
Right, a very real, tangible problem. But the document suggests it went even deeper than just material need.
So?
It clarifies that the church had to investigate and combat the roots, consequences, and effects of material pauperism in its own unique way. But even more widespread and perhaps more insidious in their view was what it called moral pauperism.
Moral pauperism.
Yeah, the mass phenomena of moral and Christian degeneration that they felt infected all levels of society. It was a poverty of spirit and virtue that extended beyond just economic destitution.
Mm.
Even if you were materially comfortable, you could still be spiritually impoverished in their eyes.
That sounds like a terrifying prospect. The emergence of a spiritual proletariat, this widespread lack of Christian life and virtues, it highlights that wealth alone wasn't a protection against this deeper kind of emptiness.
And crucially, this problem wasn't limited to the materially poor. The document critically connects the issue to the wealthy classes themselves.
How did they see the rich contributing?
It notes the misuse of earthly possessions in greed and wastefulness, hard-heartedness, the pursuit of money and honor, the spirit of speculation in business. All these behaviors, the text argues, reveal the same inner emptiness, the same selfishness, the German word is Selbstsucht, across all social strata.
Selbstsucht.
Selfish. Right. It's a powerful indictment, suggesting that moral decay was a universal affliction, not just a problem of the lower classes, and that selfishness was a root cause regardless of one's bank balance.
And this moral and material divide inevitably led to this chasm of arrogance and envy, Kluft des dunklen Neides, between the possessing and non-possessing classes. A classic societal tension, but framed here with a specific moral dimension.
Absolutely. The document analyzes this societal tension really deeply. It points to the fear among the wealthy, a fear born directly from the 1848 revolutions, which had really shaken the European elites.
Oh, they were scared.
And on the other side, the envy and rage among the poor. Crucially, it posits that both these emotions sprang from the false, selfish position society had taken towards private property.
How so?
Property, rather than being seen as something to be sanctified and used responsibly for the common good, had become this source of division and injustice, undermining the very concept of community. It fueled both the arrogance of the rich and the envy of the poor.
So the solution, according to the document, wasn't just economic redistribution or political reform, though those might play a part.
No, the core solution they proposed was much deeper. It was a profound moral rebirth of the people, sittliche Wiedergeburt des Volks, affecting both the upper and lower classes.
A moral rebirth.
Yes, and this rebirth had to start inwardly in the hearts. It's a very spiritual and foundational approach to a deeply complex societal issue, recognizing that external changes wouldn't last without that internal transformation first.
Okay, so if widespread moral decay and this huge class division weren't enough of a challenge, the inner mission faced another significant growing threat: the emergence of explicitly anti-Christian ideologies like communism.
Yeah, a whole new front opened up.
The text frames anti-Christianity as this powerful force uniting various classes into a powerful hostile camp. This must have felt like a direct assault on everything the church stood for.
Oh, absolutely. The document provides a pretty sharp analysis of its origins as they saw it.
What did they pinpoint?
They described it as a blend of existing disbelief, a rejection of what it called positive Christianity, meaning historical Orthodox Christianity, frivolous customs, and, interestingly, the selfish, greedy pursuit of material interests by the wealthy themselves.
So the failings of the rich actually fueled the anti-Christian movements.
That's exactly what they argued.
Mm.
It wasn't just a bottom-up movement. It was fueled by moral and material failings across society, including the perceived hypocrisy and self-interest of the elite. This gave these new ideologies fertile ground to grow and gain credibility.
And these communistic ideas weren't just abstract philosophy, were they?
Not at all. They directly targeted the field of labor, actively seeking to destroy property and personal ownership. This was a direct assault on the economic and social order that the church, in its view, sought to uphold and sanctify. A real clash of fundamental worldviews.
And the document identifies who is spreading these ideas most effectively.
Yes, the craftsmen's associations. Handwerkergesell and the journeymen.
Why them?
It notes their unique living conditions. They were constantly traveling for work, they were young, and they had organizational skills, often honed by traditional guild structures. All this made them the most effective propaganda for spreading socialist ideas.
They were mobile messengers.
Exactly. They moved through cities and villages, into companions' inns, into the innermost of households, into workshops, to masters, journeymen, and apprentices. They were uniquely positioned to disseminate these challenging new doctrines, literally carrying the message across the land into every corner of working life.
The text issues a really stark warning about this, almost a cry of alarm.
It does. It claims these movements aim to destroy not only the faith of the fathers, but also their customs. The whole traditional way of life was under threat.
And it mentions something quite chilling.
Yeah, it speaks of them boasting of lighting great fires with banknotes, bills of exchange, testaments, tax lists, rental and lease contracts, and debt obligations.
burning the symbols of the old order.
Precisely. It illustrates the radical, destructive potential they saw in these new ideologies, a complete overthrow of the existing social and economic system, not just reform.
So for the intermission, the core threat was clear and existential.
Utterly. The faith of the fathers and their customs must be overthrown, as the communists supposedly demanded. It wasn't just about economic models, it was about the very spiritual and moral fabric of German society. These movements were seen as directly antithetical to the Christian foundations the intermission sought to restore and rebuild. The stakes, in their view, couldn't have been higher.
Beyond the sort of general societal decay and these big ideological threats, the intermission also focused its attention on specific, highly vulnerable groups that were often overlooked, right?
Yes, they had a very targeted approach as well.
One primary area was prisoner care. This was a realm where human suffering was often at its most acute and, frankly, hidden from public view.
And the document provides a really powerful historical perspective on this, highlighting just how revolutionary their compassionate approach was meant to be.
How so?
It notes the triumph of faith that first sanctified prisoners in a merciless world. It draws this stark contrast with the horrors of proceedings with criminals stretching back to Roman times.
It mentions the Tullianum prison.
Yeah, a notorious example of ancient mercilessness and continuing through Germanic history. This historical sweep shows how profound the idea of compassionate prisoner care born from Christian faith actually was in a world long accustomed to brutality and neglect in its prisons.
Yet, despite this historical ideal and maybe some growing awareness, even in the 19th century, there were still huge problems.
Massive problems. There was a loud complaint about the incredibly small number of such workers actually ministering in prisons.
Not enough people doing the work.
Exactly. And maybe more shockingly, the document still highlighted the prevalence of corrupti carcerum custodes, corrupt prison guards.
Corrupt guards.
Still.
Huh.
The problem so persistent, it was already documented way back in 435 CE in the Theodosian Code.
Wow. That tells you something.
It reveals the deep-seated, systemic nature of the challenges they faced. Not just individual acts of cruelty, but entrenched corruption making reform incredibly difficult.
Okay, so moving from the incarcerated to the innocent, the deep dive also turns its attention to neglected children.
Another huge area of concern.
The document laments that many children simply received no schooling at all, a fundamental failure in societal provision for the next generation.
A clear indicator of systemic neglect, leaving countless young lives without even a basic foundation.
And the text gives a very concrete example, doesn't it?
It does. It reports that 500 children in just one city were documented as attending no school at all. 500.
Just in one city.
And to further illustrate the point, it mentions Sunday schools over in Scotland where, interestingly, adult poor who could not read were regularly taught the Bible by voluntary helpers.
So the problem wasn't just children, and it wasn't just Germany.
Exactly. It shows that the problem of illiteracy and lack of basic Christian instruction was widespread and tackled with creative, volunteer-led solutions elsewhere. It painted this picture of broad educational and spiritual destitution that the intermission felt compelled to address.
No, it wasn't just external forces threatening society. The document is quite critical, actually, examining the church's own internal shortcomings.
Yes, it takes an honest look inward.
It recognizes that to effectively respond to the crisis, the church itself needed renewal. It points out, for example, that many pastors were serving thousands of souls in incredibly large parishes.
The scale was overwhelming.
Imagine one pastor, maybe with one colleague, trying to care for 6,000 souls, half in this city, half scattered across the country. The strain must have been immense.
And the impact of this strain is shown starkly in the attendance figures they cite.
What do they find?
In one example, out of thousands of parishioners, only 60 to 80 persons still attended Holy Communion, a tiny fraction.
60 to 80 out of thousands.
And maybe even more surprisingly, individual sermons, specifically for the so-called poor and elderly, were apparently attended by no one from the thousands, apart from the few poor and elderly already expected to be there.
So massive disengagement from core church activities, a spiritual apathy mirroring the broader societal decay.
Exactly. And adding to this, the document notes the problem of failing education systems, stating bluntly that schools were in the deepest decay.
So the kids weren't getting adequate instruction either.
Right. The future of the church and society, often receiving inadequate instruction, just perpetuating the cycle of moral and spiritual decline. It was seen as a failure at multiple levels.
And the clergy themselves were stretched incredibly thin.
Immensely so. Pastors were bound by necessary official duties, the Amtgeschäfte, which ironically often led to neglected church services and actual pastoral care. They were bogged down in admin.
And the geography didn't help.
Not at all. Some parishes were physically enormous, spanning 12, even up to 19 miles, or covered incredibly dense urban populations with 12,000 and 30,000 souls. It's clear the existing structures were simply overwhelmed, utterly inadequate for the scale of human need.
Leading to a feeling of helplessness.
Definitely, among even the most dedicated clergy.
So all these factors, massive parishes, poor attendance, failing schools, overworked clergy, they contributed to what the document calls a fragmentation of forces. Zersplitterung der Kräfte.
Yeah, a scattering of effort.
It severely hampered the church's ability to take effective, coordinated action. Their efforts were scattered, insufficient against this tidal wave of societal problems. They couldn't respond coherently.
And the document dramatically calls out the great cities, specifically. They're labeled the main schools of all vices and sins of the people.
Harsh words.
Very. And within those cities, the faithful remnants of the congregations were described vividly as being like a ship on a wild sea.
Wow. Lost at sea.
It captures this profound sense of isolation and vulnerability felt by committed believers amidst overwhelming urban decay and spiritual indifference. It really emphasizes the desperate need for a new, organized response from within the church itself.
Now, the intermissions concern didn't stop at Germany's borders, did it? It recognized the vast German diaspora as another critical area of spiritual and material need.
Absolutely. Their vision was broader than just the homeland.
Besides the, 5 million Germans estimated in America at the time, there were another 11 to 12 million scattered across Europe, often far from the support of their home church. This was a truly international crisis for them.
And their plight was often severe. Many were described as ecclesiastically abandoned, forgotten, or neglected, impoverished, wandering, internally degenerated to the deepest degree.
That's a devastating description.
It is. And tragically, some were even found allied with the enemies of the fatherland and the evangelical church, which highlights their vulnerability to radical ideologies and assimilation when they lacked that spiritual support system.
So spiritual and national identity were linked for them.
Intrinsically linked, it seems. Losing one often meant losing the other.
The document provides some specific, almost heartbreaking examples from European cities, doesn't it?
It does. In Paris, for example, an estimated 60,000 Germans, maybe 50,000, including thousands of specific professionals, 6,000 general pros, 4,000 tailors, 2,000 shoemakers.
A huge community.
Huge. And a floating population of Protestants reached maybe 40,000 souls, living largely without church, without God's word, without sermon and pastoral care. A German church was only founded by imperial decree in 1808, showing how long this neglect had festered before any organized relief came.
And what about Marseille, another port city?
A similar, maybe even more acute situation was unfolding there. A German evangelical community was founded in 1846, but many resident Germans lived without church, without God's word, and could hardly even be considered Protestants or Christians by name.
Just completely adrift.
Pretty much. This floating population of craftsmen, factory workers, servants was considerable, and it included unfortunate emigrants, like the 3,000 Germans who sailed for Africa from Marseille in 1847. Many returned sick and destitute, highlighting both spiritual and material abandonment.
And the challenges extended even closer to home, right, into Switzerland.
Yes, Switzerland faced its own issues, particularly with anti-Christian literature. The document specifically names Wilhelm Marr influencing German journeymen working there.
What kind of influence?
These movements were seen as particularly dangerous, envisioning a general religious revolution to gradually end all religion. They went so far as to equate Jesuitism, Catholicism, and Protestantism as essentially the same enemy, fighting against their shared goal of educating humanity for a transcendent world.
Wow, lumping them all together.
Exactly. It was framed as an open call for the overthrow of the faith of the fathers and their customs, directly impacting the German youth working abroad, making them vulnerable.
What about other places? London, Russia?
London had 5 German evangelical churches, but the sheer number and dispersion of Germans made adequate pastoral care physically impossible for the preachers. They just couldn't reach everyone. A German hospital was founded in 1845, showing the need for practical care, too. Even in St. Petersburg, a charitable society for Germans was established in 1843 because German poverty there had reached a peak. They were even seeking caregivers from Germany itself.
And further afield, Constantinople, Rome.
Constantinople. Hundreds of German Protestants lived in great neglect, often in mixed marriages or immoral relationships. Rome, a society for the support of wandering Germans, was formed in 1848 just to address the problem of German beggars there. Other neglected areas included Florence, Portugal, Spain, Hungary. The list goes on.
So the overall picture of the German diaspora in Europe.
The document concludes it was largely a chaotic, surging mass of German evangelicals, ecclesiastically abandoned, impoverished, wandering, and internally degenerated. The scale of the problem was just enormous and geographically widespread.
And then, of course, there was North America, a huge destination for emigrants.
The document turns its attention there, acknowledging that German immigrants were on the way to mixing with all peoples and forming a new Germany, a continent of immense hope but also profound challenges, a vast new frontier for the intermissions concern.
It mentions some early settlements, right?
It does. Examples like the Frankfurter Land Company in 1682 under Pastor Pistorius, who settled in Pennsylvania, or Württembergers forming the core of the Lutheran church community in Pennsylvania in 1742. These early groups established a Christian presence, but it was just a tiny fraction of what was coming.
Because emigration exploded after the Napoleonic Wars, didn't it?
Massively. After 1815, the movement rose to its highest. In 1816, 3,000 Germans per year were colonizing America. That's a huge jump compared to just 300 annually between 1784 and 1815.
A tenfold increase.
And by 1846, a staggering 94.2% of all German immigrants went to America. That's an exodus, an enormous spiritual challenge for the church back home and in the New World.
But the church infrastructure wasn't ready for that influx, was it?
Woefully inadequate. The document notes an insufficient number of pastors. Only 7 seminaries for millions of Germans, and some of those were very small.
7 seminaries for millions.
Yeah. Plus, they worried about unworthy infiltrations into office and just meager means for preparation for the clergy they did have. The spiritual care system just couldn't cope, leaving many vulnerable.
And for those arriving, the initial experience could be brutal.
Devastating. The document describes the great German proletariat in the seaports of the East, especially places like New York. New arrivals facing utter destitution. They'd escaped problems in Germany only to be met with another set of equally severe hardships. It highlights the full spectrum of needs the intermission felt it had to address, both abroad and at home.
Okay, so we've painted this picture of widespread spiritual and moral need, both at home in Germany and among the vast diaspora. How did the intermission actually aim to spread the gospel and initiate that moral rebirth they talked about? What were their primary tools?
Well, they went back to basics in some ways, but scaled it up. They revisited and actively employed Bible and tract societies as absolutely crucial instruments.
So literature was key.
Hugely key. Their mission was to distribute healthy Christian literature. And the document specifically emphasizes books, not just fleeting brochures, as a direct counteraction to the poison of unbelief they saw spreading through society.
A battle for hearts and minds through print.
Exactly. A conscious battle, recognizing the foundational power of the written word.
And they had some major players involved in this publishing effort, right?
Oh, yes. Major publishing houses like W. Reffer, Yarmare, Cassel, Naumann, Perthus, Felix Schneider, Steinkopf, Delhugel and Peeling, J. Winter, Wohlgemuth, H. Zimmer, and the Kaiserswerther Anstalt were involved. Plus significant collective efforts like the Norddeutscher Verein, which had 47 main secretariats working across northern Germany, and the Kulwer Verlag Verein, led by the famous Dr. Barth, known for its focus on both external and internal missions.
So these were serious, coordinated efforts to get Christian materials out there.
Absolutely. Flooding the market, essentially. But here's where it gets really interesting, I think.
Go on.
The insight of the intermission was recognizing the power of middlemen, colporteurs, and itinerant preachers. The document calls them Zwischenleiter, linking elements.
Zwischenglieder, human bridges.
Exactly. These individuals were absolutely essential. They literally carried Bibles, tracts, and Christian books directly to people in their homes, workshops, inns. Vital human connections.
And the document specifies what kind of people they needed for this role.
It does. It lays out their essential qualities. They must speak the language of the people, understand their worries and needs from their own life experience, and possess their trust from the outset.
So, relatable, trustworthy figures.
Right. Described as faithful, God-fearing men, well-versed in Scripture, grounded in faith, and equipped through experience. They weren't just salespeople, they were spiritual guides, chosen for their relational abilities and deep faith. Community builders, really.
And their method wasn't form or preaching.
No, that was crucial too. Their method was all as much as possible in the simple form of conversation and storytelling, not academic lectures or fire and brimstone sermons, to win people for the kingdom of heaven.
A grassroots, personal approach.
Exactly. It allowed them to connect with individuals on a much deeper level, meeting people where they were, literally and figuratively, building trust one conversation at a time.
And did it work? Was it effective?
The document claims it was. It cites success in Saxony, Prussia, and the Rhineland. It even notes that during the Republican movements of 1848, these colporteurs were instrumental in countering political agitation with their message, showing a societal relevance beyond just spiritual matters.
And the scale could be impressive.
Truly. Look at England and North America. The New York Society alone employed 397 colporteurs in just 1 year.
Nearly 400.
And get this. They visited an astonishing 254,308 families and held nearly 10,000 lectures or meetings, all at a significant cost for the time, $33,987. That's a massive coordinated field operation.
But it couldn't have been easy work. They must have faced pushback.
Oh, certainly. These colporteurs faced rejection, scorn, and contempt regularly. Yet the document frames this not as a deterrent, interestingly, but often as an opportunity.
An opportunity? How?
An opportunity for joyful, confident confession of Christ and for profound conversations about faith. Their very presence and persistence in the face of adversity became a testament to their message, sometimes turning opposition into an evangelistic moment.
Now, the mission didn't stop with adults. It focused heavily on the next generation, starting really young. How did they approach childcare for the most vulnerable, especially in that era of such widespread family breakdown?
They saw the need and innovated. They introduced and championed the emergence of creches or nurseries. The German term is Krippen oder Wiegenanstalten.
Creches, like early daycare.
Pretty much. They particularly drew inspiration from France. There are 271 such houses already existed. Similar initiatives were popping up in Holland, Neuchâtel, and Zurich.
And what did they do?
These facilities provided care for infants of working mothers during the day, a safe environment, relieving some of the immense pressure on struggling families. This is a radical form of practical support back then.
And beyond infants, what about slightly older children?
In addition to creches, the document notes the spread of Vordersschulen, literally waiting schools, and kindergarten, infant gardens, from England across Europe. These were similar to what we'd recognize as modern kindergartens, providing early childhood education and care, an acknowledgement of the importance of holistic development from the earliest ages.
And Sunday schools played a big role too, right?
A crucial instrument, especially for awakening spiritual life in children and sometimes adults too. The document particularly highlights their significance in England.
Why England specifically?
It says they contributed primarily to awakening clarity about Christian truths and the impulse of saving love. These schools gathered hundreds of thousands of volunteers, a massive grassroots effort providing moral and religious instruction, often bridging the educational gaps left by failing public schools at the time.
Now, moving beyond basic care and instruction, the intermission recognized that some children required much more intensive intervention.
Yes, those who had fallen through all the cracks.
This led to a uniquely German contribution, didn't it? The rescue institutions.
Exactly, Rettungsanstalten, and societies specifically for children needing extraordinary Christian educating assistance. These were places for deeply neglected, orphaned, or at-risk youth, aiming not just for basic care, but for true rehabilitation and spiritual formation.
And the document names some key pioneers of this movement.
It does. Johann Hinrich Wichern, the renowned founder of the Rauhaus House in Hamburg starting in 1833, hugely influential.
The Rauhaus House, yes.
Also Graf Adalbert von der Reck, who established Overdyk from 1816, which later became Düsselthal, then Christian Heinrich Zeller in Boygen, Switzerland. These individuals were real trailblazers in child welfare, creating models for Christian-based education and rehabilitation that prioritized individualized care within a family-like setting. That was key, the family model.
And the scale of these efforts became quite significant.
Remarkably so. Württemberg alone, the document boasts, had 23 such flourishing rescue houses, caring for over 1,000 children. This wasn't a small, isolated effort. It was a substantial, province-wide commitment, a serious investment in the future generation.
And the influence spread beyond Germany?
It did. Bergen's model, for example, spread to Switzerland, Russia, and even found its way into the Catholic Church in Austria, demonstrating the universal appeal and power of the core idea.
So it crossed denominational lines, too.
To some extent, yes. In Protestant Germany, the document records that nearly 100 such institutions and societies emerged in just a decade, scattered like fruitful seeds across the land, each nurturing this concept of rescuing and educating vulnerable children, a real explosion of activity.
Now, it's clear from everything we're discussing that women played an absolutely crucial role in these multifaceted efforts. How does the document frame their contribution?
It explicitly traces the origin of women's associations Frauenverein back to the significant societal upheaval of the Wars of Liberation around 1813-1815. It suggests these national crises really spurred women into organized, collective action for the common good.
Necessity breeding invention, perhaps?
Perhaps. And the text provides specific examples of their profound impact. Queen Katharina of Württemberg, for instance, founded the highly influential Central Welfare Society in 1816, which became a model for others across Germany.
And there were grassroots examples, too.
Oh, yes. In Hamburg, a woman named Amalie King's associate, Elise Averdag, following Bartel's earlier work, expanded a women's association founded in 1819 for poor and sick care. And this initiative, born in Hamburg, quickly spread its influence internationally to Denmark, Sweden, the Russian Baltic provinces, Holland, France, and even America.
So this wasn't just local charity, it was a transnational movement of compassionate care, led largely by women.
Demonstrating women's immense organizational power and reach at the time.
And these associations weren't limited to just one type of activity, were they?
No, they were quite diverse. The document describes them often creating local centers that combined multiple services, housing for the poor, infirmaries, servant schools for training domestic staff, and workshops for employment.
Comprehensive local support networks.
Exactly. Mostly urban, but some rural initiatives existed too, showing their adaptability. They provided everything from shelter to healthcare to skills training.
The text offers a really profound interpretation of this women's work, doesn't it? Calling it a faith art.
Yes, I love that phrase. It argues that this work embodied a faith art, where giving and receiving were transformed into service before God and an offering of thanks.
Elevating charity beyond just material aid.
Precisely. It powerfully highlights how legitimate possession, property, can again be sanctified through acts of sacrificial love. It frames charity not as mere handouts, but as a spiritual act that restores dignity to both the giver and the receiver. Syncret economics almost.
Now, another critical instrument, often closely related to women's work, was home visiting societies' Besuchsverein.
Yes, taking the care directly to people.
This was about going into the homes of the needy, not waiting for them to come to the church or an institution. A very direct, personal approach.
And the London example is particularly detailed in the text.
Yes.
In 1828, the Hauptgesellschaft der Förderung der Besuchsvereine, the main society for the promotion of visiting societies, was formed.
A central body for home visiting.
Yes, and it then divided London into 41 main districts. Their purpose was to offer evangelical counsel with God's comfort and diverse help to the poor in their own homes.
Systematic and personal.
Right. This structured, systematic approach allowed for deep, individualized care and spiritual guidance right where it was most needed, bridging that gap between formal institutions and isolated individuals suffering alone.
Okay, so given those immense challenges in the large cities, which the document chillingly called the main schools of all vices and sins of the people, how did the inner mission envision approaching these complex urban problems holistically, going beyond just individual acts of charity or home visits?
They looked for models, and the document points specifically to the London City Mission, founded in 1835, as a prime example of what was possible.
What was impressive about the London model?
Its rapid growth, mainly. Its income grew dramatically from 2,714 in its first year to 16,141 1/0 after just 12 years, and it was supported by 108 local aid societies.
Showing coordinated effort could yield significant results.
Exactly. It demonstrated the power of a comprehensive, coordinated urban mission. It proved that such an ambitious undertaking was not only necessary, but actually achievable with organized effort. It provided a tangible model for Germany to potentially emulate.
So the document then explicitly turns its attention to the great cities of Germany, right? Seeing them as these epicenters of decay.
Yes, because they have become the main schools of all vices and sins of the people. That damning assessment again. The vision for German cities wasn't just about isolated acts of charity anymore. It was about reclaiming the very heart of urban society from moral and spiritual decay through a unified strategic effort.
And what was the proposed structure for these German city missions?
It was quite innovative for its time. They envisioned City missionaries, Stadtmissionär.
Like the colporteurs, but city-focused.
Similar skill set, yes. Individuals who should be inwardly capable, like the colporteurs we discussed earlier, their role would be to offer continuous proclamation in colportage and free public speaking. They'd be the boots on the ground, engaging directly with diverse urban populations in varied and accessible ways on the streets, in homes, and public gatherings.
Bringing the message and practical help right into the urban environment.
Precisely. And the ultimate goal was to establish a true city mission, Stadtmission, where the church could be rebuilt from within outwards from the living cornerstones of its faithful members.
Rebuilding from the inside out.
Exactly. And this was described as a form of organization hitherto unknown in Germany. A radical reimagining of the church's role, shifting from a passive institution waiting for people to come in to an active, transforming force embedded within the urban landscape, working block by block, person by person.
What's really forward-thinking about the intermission, I think, is that it wasn't content with just charity or individual spiritual renewal, as important as those were. It aimed for deeper systemic change.
Yes, moving beyond just alleviating symptoms.
And it even encouraged self-help among the needy themselves. They weren't just about giving handouts. There was an element of empowerment.
This represents a new step, explicitly proposed by the document, advocating for Christian associations of the needy themselves for their social purposes, family, property, and labor.
Associations run by the needy for the needy.
Exactly. This fundamentally shifted the dynamic. It empowered individuals to take collective action for their own welfare, rather than being just passive recipients of aid. It recognized the dignity and agency of the poor, allowing them to participate directly in their own upliftment. Mutual aid, essentially.
Does the document give examples of this in action?
It does. It points to the St. Regis Society in France, for instance, which had been active for 20 years across 75 cities and apparently achieved rewarding success in rebuilding broken families through mutual support.
And in Germany?
In Germany, it mentions the Berlin Baugesellschaft, Building Society, which aimed specifically to help the poor acquire basic property, tackling a root cause of destitution, not just treating symptoms. And it notes that Pastor Otto von Gerlach encouraged his Elizabeth congregation in Berlin to actively foster such self-help associations, demonstrating the concept being applied right at the local church level.
Now, there was another, even bigger systemic idea proposed, wasn't there? Something called inner colonization.
Yes, this was a particularly significant, almost visionary proposal. It was presented as a deliberate alternative to the huge wave of immigration we discussed earlier.
Instead of leaving Germany, build something new within it.
Precisely. It involved establishing new church social model communities. The German is Kirchlich Sozial Mastgemeinde, and right there within Germany itself.
Model communities, what would they look like?
The idea was that in these planned communities, the property class and proletarians could be gradually integrated, forming new associations, acquiring land or skills, and building a collective life based on Christian principles.
A whole new social structure almost?
Kind of. The text argues, could fulfill the drive for community and belonging that often led people to emigrate or join radical movements, while simultaneously serving the fatherland and the church by strengthening social bonds, creating economic opportunity, and preventing further spiritual and material decay. It was a really comprehensive solution proposed for both social fragmentation and population loss, rooted in the idea of collective Christian living as a social force.
Okay, so after identifying all these deep societal problems and outlining this incredibly wide range of innovative responses from colporteurs to rescue homes to inner colonization, the document then tackles a really crucial practical question. How do you actually organize such a vast, multifaceted effort across an entire nation?
Right. The logistical challenge must have seemed immense.
It acknowledges that the young, tender plant of all these free acts of love, while fresh and green and vital, needed structure. It needed, as the text puts it, to grow from the firm, God-planted, healthy trunk of the office, meaning the formal church structure.
That's a key tension they recognized. You need both the grassroots passion and the institutional strength.
And this highlights a significant challenge for the church at the time, didn't it?
A huge one. The existing free activities, all these wonderful initiatives, were often isolated and scattered, lacking cohesion, and sometimes even working at cross purposes.
No unified strategy.
Exactly. The document argues quite strongly that a healthy, self-contained, future-oriented, fruitful organization was impossible without recognizing that this intermission was Fundamentally, a work of the entire church, not just the domain of a few enthusiastic individuals or independent societies.
It needed buy-in from the top down and bottom up.
Right. It required the institutional backing and integration that only the broader church structure could provide if it was going to move beyond scattered, though well-intentioned efforts.
So the challenge then became how to unify these efforts without, crushing the very spirit that gave them life. How to get organized without killing the passion.
That was the tightrope walk. They had to avoid both the deadest mechanism of a rigid top-down hierarchy, which could easily stifle the spirit of voluntary love, and the most confusing disarray of totally uncoordinated individual efforts, which would ultimately be ineffective and unsustainable.
Finding that balance between structure and spontaneity.
Exactly. Seeking structure without sacrificing genuine commitment and local initiative. A really delicate balancing act. Hashtag integrating AFTIT, office, and free love work.
So how did the intermission actually propose integrating the formal church office, that is, the ordained clergy, the bishops, the established institutions, with all these free acts of love coming from lay people? How could they bridge that gap between the formal structure and the informal, passionate service?
Their solution was fundamentally theological. The document posits the general priesthood of Christians. That Lutheran concept, again, is the key unifying principle.
The idea that all believers are priests, in a sense.
Right. It asserts that all members are consecrated to this foundational office through their baptism, and that this general priesthood clarifies all other offices, including the ordained ministry.
So lay involvement wasn't just helpful, it was theological.
Exactly. It meant that the work of the intermission wasn't seen as something separate from the church's core identity, but as a natural expression of the inherent priesthood of all believers. This made lay involvement central and spiritually mandated, not just a nice add-on.
So the ideal they aimed for was
a free union and combination of the bearers of the office, the clergy, with the work and societies of the intermission. It wasn't about one absorbing the other or one controlling the other, but a truly symbiotic relationship.
a partnership.
A partnership where formal leadership and grassroots initiatives could mutually strengthen and inform each other. A really collaborative vision.
And importantly, this union wasn't just an administrative task for the clergy, was it?
No, and this is crucial. It wasn't to be undertaken because office bearers were appointed, commissioned, or accountable for it as just another bureaucratic duty.
Why then?
Instead, it was by virtue of their general priestly character, their general Christian office, for which the document says all have to give an account to the Lord.
So a spiritual calling for them, too.
A profound distinction. It framed their participation not as a job requirement, but as a personal spiritual calling rooted in their own faith and baptismal vows. It transformed administrative involvement into an act of worship and loving service, driven by a deep sense of personal vocation, not just obligation.
The ultimate aim, then, was to build this covenant of love, Leibsbund, within the church itself.
Yes, a Liebesbund, where everyone, ordained and lay, including pastors, could mutually share in the work, recognizing their shared spiritual mandate and working together in unity. It's a really beautiful vision of collaborative service. Hashtags, tags, structuring city missions for greater effect.
Okay, let's get specific again. For those immense challenges in the large cities, how should the city missions actually be organized on the ground? The text discusses the pros and cons of different parish structures, right? Geographic versus personal parishes.
It does. It weighs the options. While geographic divisions, traditional parishes based on location, were seen as ideal for maintaining ecclesiastical character and a strong local community identity.
The traditional model.
Right. But the document notes significant practical challenges with that model in the complex urban environment. In Bremen, for example, the personal parish system, where ministers served individuals based on affiliation, regardless of where they lived, was actually swallowing the geographic one.
Why was that happening?
Well, pastors often worked beyond their official parish boundaries out of necessity, following needs. And some geographic parishes simply lacked interested clergy or had very few active members willing or able to engage in intermission work. The old structures weren't always fitting the new reality.
Showing the ideal didn't always match the messy reality on the ground. It demanded flexible solutions.
Exactly. So the proposed solution was a great city mission society. A Großstadtmissionsverein.
A citywide society.
Yes, rooted in what it calls a truly church reformational fundamental view. And that view was that all the city's inhabitants of one confession, say all Lutherans or all Reformed, form one great ecclesiastical unity, one overall community, rather than being seen as just isolated pockets in separate parishes.
A unified vision for the whole city's church.
Right. Essential for tackling problems on a citywide scale. It brought a sense of corporate responsibility to urban, spiritual, and social welfare.
And how would this central body function?
It would organize both externally through parish circles, ensuring pastor participation, and internally by creating dedicated spiritual centers or hubs. Its main task would be to coordinate and fulfill the overall needs of the inner mission across the entire city.
So pooling resources and strategy.
Precisely. Crucially, it would facilitate exchange between parish communities and provide aid and initiatives that individual parish societies simply couldn't manage on their own, like launching extensive colportage campaigns or funding large-scale itinerant preaching efforts. It was about creating a powerful, overarching infrastructure for support, coordination, and resource sharing that isolated efforts just couldn't achieve.
Now, the vision of the intermission extended far beyond just individual cities and parishes, didn't it? How would all these local efforts connect to create a broader impact, provincial, national, even international? They understood that problems didn't respect city limits or parish boundaries.
Definitely. The plan envisioned provincial mission circles that would essentially adapt the city mission structures to rural conditions.
Tailoring the model for the countryside.
Exactly. These circles would address issues specific to rural areas, like poor schools, struggling clergy in widely dispersed parishes, the spiritual needs of farm laborers or itinerant workers. It was a recognition that the problems in rural Germany, while different from urban ones, were equally pressing and required tailored yet connected solutions.
And beyond the provincial level, how did they envision national coordination?
The document called for great church patriotic assemblies, kirchlich Vaterländische Versammlungen, to meet annually.
Big national gatherings.
Yes, really fostering a sense of shared purpose and identity across the whole German evangelical church.
What would happen at these assemblies?
They would bring together representatives from all the various mission stations and works across the country. The purpose was deeply communal, to see each other face to face, to consult and learn from each other's experiences, to take and give support and ideas, and crucially, to offer collective sacrifices of praise and prayer.
Building that national network.
Right. This regular nationwide assembly was designed specifically to strengthen that covenant of love, the Liebesbund, that bound all these disparate efforts together, fostering unity, shared purpose, mutual encouragement, and learning from collective experience.
The intermission also acknowledged an international dimension to its work, didn't it? Even beyond the diaspora concerns.
It did. The document mentions the Congrès International de la Charité, International Charity Congress, which was constituted in Brussels back in 1846, with Paris proposed as its headquarters.
An early international NGO, almost.
In a way. It was an early attempt to create a bond of these works through all nations, demonstrating a global awareness of shared social and spiritual needs that transcended national borders. An early ecumenical and international impulse for social action.
And specifically for the German diaspora, the intermission felt a unique responsibility.
Specific duty, the text calls it, to connect them back to their home church and provide support. It mentions concrete efforts like Bremen's Evangelical Society for North America.
Sending support across the Atlantic.
Yes, and similar societies based in Langenberg, Korhessen, and Bavaria. The Bavarian one, led by Pater Wilhelm Lohe in Neuendettelsau, is particularly noted.
What was special about Lohe's work?
His society had a particular focus on preserving the Lutheran confession among German emigrants. It highlights the concern not just for general spiritual welfare, but for maintaining their specific confessional identity abroad, seeing it as crucial for their spiritual health and connection to the homeland church.
Okay, so all these incredibly ambitious plans, from local initiatives in cities and rural areas, to national assemblies, to international outreach and diaspora care, clearly required some kind of central coordinating body, right, to hold it all together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You couldn't manage all that without some kind of central hub. This led to the formation of what became known as the Central Committee, the Zentralausschuss.
The Zentralausschuss.
The Nerve Center.
Pretty much. This committee was formally established in Berlin on January 9, 1849, marking a really significant organizational milestone for the whole movement.
And its mission. Its overarching mission was to oversee and unify the entire intermission of the German evangelical church, bringing coherence to that wide array of efforts, providing strategic direction, and ensuring they all moved, more or less, in a common direction.
So what were its key functions, according to the document? How would it actually operate?
The document outlines several crucial and far-reaching functions. First, information gathering. It would have agents and correspondents reporting back on local needs and resources from all across the land, getting the facts on the ground.
Eyes and ears everywhere.
Second, information dissemination. The committee would regularly inform its agents and the wider church, publish its news significantly in the Fliegenden Blättern des Rauhenhauses, the flying leaves of the Rouse House, Wichern's influential journal.
Using existing successful platforms.
Right, and produce foundational documents, like the very one we've been exploring today. This journal, they noted with some pride, was read throughout Germany and beyond its borders, ensuring widespread communication and shared knowledge.
What else? Money, people, meetings.
All of the above. Third, fundraising. Collecting contributions, both general and for specific mission purposes, to actually sustain its vast operations. Vision needs resources, right?
Can't run on love alone.
Fourth, training. The committee aimed to establish alumni, basically, training programs or institutes for candidates and workers, often hosted within existing successful institutions like the Rahes House. Ensuring a steady supply of well-prepared personnel was vital.
Building capacity.
And finally, fifth, conferences. It would organize those annual congresses we mentioned, bringing representatives together to exchange experiences, report on activities, learn from each other, and make joint decisions, fostering collaboration and strategic planning across the entire movement.
So it was a comprehensive coordinating body. But what was the ultimate goal of all this organization?
The ultimate overarching goal, as envisioned by the document, was deeply grassroots, despite the central committee. It was to make the intermission the affair of the communities, Sache der Gemeinden werden.
Owned by the local communities.
Exactly. Empowering both clergy and lay teachers and members to actively participate and take ownership. It was this clever combination of a bottom-up energy and top-down coordination, aiming to deeply integrate the work into the very lifeblood of the local church. A movement thrives when it's owned by everyone involved.
And the document ends with a pretty powerful vision, doesn't it?
It does, almost prophetic. It declares that this unified effort, this Liebesbund, would create a renewed power within the church, a power mighty enough to victoriously resist the gates of hell, demonstrating definitively that the Christian German people is not yet lost.
A declaration of hope and resilience.
Absolutely. A powerful call to action, rooted in the unwavering belief that active, organized, faith-driven love could indeed turn the tide of societal decay. A belief that I think still resonates deeply today. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow, what an incredible journey we've taken today, deep into the heart of Germany's 19th century intermission. It's really something.
It really is a fascinating piece of history.
We've seen a movement that sought to fundamentally redefine the church's role in a fragmented, suffering society. Not just stand apart from it, but engage it head-on. We've traced its historical roots, confronted the profound social needs it aimed to meet. I mean, everything from moral decay and the breakdown of families to economic disparity, the rise of unsettling ideologies, the spiritual neglect of the diaspora. The list is long.
The challenges were immense.
And we've uncovered the courageous, multifaceted ways it responded, from those colporteurs creating personal connections to creches caring for the youngest, city missions aiming to transform urban landscapes, self-help initiatives empowering the needy, even those visionary intercolonization plans. It was truly comprehensive.
Driven by that powerful vision of practical love.
Exactly. And the document we've explored today, that 1889 manifesto, it truly underlines the enduring power of active, faith-born love to transform society from within, doesn't it?
It really does. And it vividly reveals that the challenges they faced, social fragmentation, moral decay, spiritual alienation, they're not unique to any single era, are they?
Not at all.
The issues faced by 19th century Germany, the breakdown of family, the chasm between rich and poor, the rise of unsettling ideologies, the neglect of the vulnerable. You can hear echoes of those in different forms, maybe even today.
Which makes their response, rooted in that covenant of love, a really compelling historical parallel for our own times.
A Lebensbund.
Yeah, that Liebesbund. The call to action embedded within this historical blueprint feels remarkably clear. To build that covenant, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, caring for the sick, visiting the imprisoned, doing all the practical things, but also, maybe most importantly, demonstrating that hope isn't lost. That, as they put it, the Christian German people is not yet lost.
It's about spiritual and practical rebirth, starting within the individual heart but extending right out to the outermost reaches of society. a testament to the Church's potential role in shaping the common good.
So this deep dive really leads us to an important question for our own time, doesn't it?
I think it has to.
What seemingly insurmountable problems in our communities today, whether it's loneliness, inequality, despair, the rapid spread of divisive ideologies online and offline, what might be transformed if we embraced such a unified, spiritually driven approach?
What new shoots of life and new fruits, as the document might ask, could be brought forth if we diligently follow the hint and working of the divine hand in our time? What if we truly fostered a covenant of love that actively seeks the welfare of the people and the service of the Church, not just for ourselves, but for the healing and flourishing of the whole world around us? It's a provocative thought.
It really is something to definitely mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Keep seeking knowledge, keep questioning, and keep connecting those dots. We'll see you next time.